The recent devaluation of the naira against the US dollar has sparked concerns about the capital base of commercial banks in Nigeria. The 2004 banking industry recapitalization, which raised banks' capital base from 2 billion to 25 billion, is now considered weakened. The capital adequacy ratio of the banking system stood at 12.8% in April 2023. Experts suggest that recapitalization may be necessary to strengthen the banking industry, while others propose alternatives like mergers and acquisitions. Others suggest alternative options such as raising capital through the stock market. However, the conversation around recapitalization is not new, as the former CBN governor, Godwill Emefiele, previously mentioned the need to recapitalize Nigerian banks to position them among the top 500 banks in the world. The total assets of leading Nigerian banks reached 87.25 trillion naira, or $116 billion in the first quarter of 2023. The erosion of the capital base due to devaluation is estimated to be around 4.5 billion since 2005. With this being the aftermath of the implementation of some of President Tinubu's economic policies since assumption of office, the Daily Trust Board of Economists says hasty implementation without palliative measures will plunge more Nigerians into multidimensional poverty. And to discuss these issues and more, I'm joined in the studio by Professor Uche Owaleke. He is a professor of finance and capital market at the Nasarawa State University, Kepi. He is also a former commissioner of finance in Imo State. Professor is flanked by Jamilu Mohammed. He's an economic analyst and an author. Welcome to the program, gentlemen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome, viewers. This is Daily Politics on Trust TV, during which we discuss issues of politics, policy, and governance. I'm Hamza Idris. We'll go on a short break, and when we return, the conversation commences. Don't go away. Welcome back. Prof, I'm starting with you. The boards of economists of Daily Trust, we have them, you know,
yes.
Led by Professor Binta Jibril. They met, and of course they commended some of the initiatives of the President Tinubu administration, but quickly observed that the hasty nature of some of these decisions might likely put millions of Nigerians in a peril. What is your take on that?
I very much agree with them. As a matter of fact, this is one issue I share, very much in common with one of the board members, my close friend, Dr. Tobe Faswa. I think that yes, the president, no doubt, has been ticking the right boxes.
So all the boxes he ticked so far,
yes, right, in terms of reforms. But again, it must be pointed out that when you are implementing reforms, these reforms need to be sequenced. There has to be a thorough, plan. And even if you use the policy document, the policy advisory, I'm sure you've seen it.
Yes.
The president's policy advisory, developed by a team led by distinguished Senator, I think, Aburi, with inputs from KPMG.
Yeah.
If you look at that document, it says clearly that with respect to the take, for example, the fiscal area, that the first 100 days, of course, it has timelines.
Yes, timeline
days,
for
12 to
everything,
18 months, 3 to 4 years. Okay, it says the first 100 days announce the removal of, fuel subsidy. And then much later in the document, you'll find that it recommends introducing non-cash palliatives to cushion the effect.
Okay.
It also recommends implementing minimum wage. It also recommends partnering with BUA and Dangote to ramp up the refined capacity. It's what I'm trying to say is that it makes recommendation with respect to the steps. So certain things that must be in place before you now do. The last point they put there is effect bullet removal of fuel subsidy.
Wow.
That is the last, meaning that those other steps are supposed to be taken care
like
of. Like
the non-cash palliatives.
Non-cash palliatives, put them in place.
Of wages.
Minimum wage. So those things are supposed to be
then
on ground.
Revamping the refineries.
Exactly. On the monetary policy side, it also says that what you find there is transition to a transparent, okay, and a unified exchange rate. That's transition. And within that transition, it says that it is recommending that the government should, first of all, model the impact of the unification of exchange rates on the economy.
Wow.
That's what it says there in the document.
Yeah, yeah.
It says also determine the quantum of external reserves that will be required to support that policy. Determine the size of the external reserves, taking into cognizance, it mentions three things. It says, one, the backlog of forex demand,
yes.
put somewhere around $12 billion. Number two, the estimate, potential demand for forex, and then contingency reserves. So all these are supposed to come into the model, okay?
Wow.
Before you now talk about unification of exchange rates. So the point is, these things have happened, more like they have happened, before some of the things recommended in that document.
Setting the cart before the horse?
Yes, that's more like it. So I want to agree with your, the
Board of Economists.
Oh yes, that is important that palliatives are put in place. It's important that reforms are not rushed, okay, because of the likely adverse effect. They're also going to have an output. And do you know why it's important?
No.
That you sequence this? In that document, it says the government is targeting GDP growth rate of 7% on the average over the next 8 years. You want to lift 100 million people out of poverty.
Yes.
You want to create 50 million jobs. They're all there. Now, if you do these reforms all at once, you are very much likely to hurt output. Oh, yes. You find a situation where inflation rate is rising and then GDP is dropping, okay? And if GDP drops, how do you now succeed in lifting people out of poverty? How do you succeed in even attaining those your growth targets? Because as we speak, some states have said you don't need to come to work every day. 3 days. Even
in fact, the Board of Economists also mentioned that this is actually
It will hurt productivity. In some states, they are even saying, even students, don't come to school, just come to school for 3 days in a week.
This will hurt. In fact, the Board of Economists mentioned this.
Oh, yes. So it's important, as I said, reforms are okay.
But the approach.
Yes.
Now, for how long, Jamilu, do you think Nigerians will continue to clap? Because as we speak, Nigerians are clapping for the president for taking these initiatives. For how long will they start feeling that there is a gap actually in implementation of this wide range of policies?
We actually have a long way to go. It's not going to be the results are certainly not going to be in the short term. The results are going to be in the long term. So if Nigerians are very resilient, then I think
they can surmount.
Yes, we can surmount. You see, as the professor has said, he has touched on certain issues, something like hurting the production side of the economy. You see, I think it's not only the issue of the policies being hasty. I think there are also gaps of miscalculations in certain part of
the actions taken so far.
The policy itself, the policies themselves. For instance, when you are talking about reducing inflation from 23% to 13%, and also talking about bringing down your rates from 18.5 to 9%, I think that is contradictory.
Very contradictory.
Yes,
there is contradiction in this.
Very, very contradictory. I don't see how you would lower your interest rates and then you say you are still lowering inflation. It's not possible.
Yes.
No, it's not
policy
possible.
trilemma.
Yes, it's very impossible. I don't know if they are going to do it by fiat, but definitely by conventional economics, it won't work.
Okay, we say by fiat. Now, you know, Nigerians were really shocked on the day of inauguration.
Oh, yes.
While reading his speech, he suddenly said, subsidy is gone. It was only 2 days ago, you know, in France, that he confessed that it was not...
Actually, in the speech.
Yeah, in the speech. He only took that.
Yes.
Is this really good for the president, that you have agreed with your team on how to maybe go about this thing, but probably, is it stage fright, or is actually the confidence that I'm in charge now?
Okay,
I can take decision on my own, that he took that risky path to announce the removal of subsidy?
For me, I think the way I interpret it is, you know, this is somebody who is passionate, is you know, somebody who is fired up. He's fired up, you know, and then you know, finding himself in that kind of circumstance.
And that's why I said maybe it is the euphoria of success.
Yes, he now said it. But let me also say this, that there must be a reason that the members of his team did not include it in the speech.
Okay, what is it?
The fact that even the policy document, you know, it talks about you know, a gradual thing. All right? So, as I said, maybe out of emotion, was too emotional about it, then he had to, you know, voice it out. But the, and of course, he saw the outcome, he saw the reaction. Immediately he said that, you know, there were queues, fuel queues all over the
country.
Yeah, so it took effect.
And it's like most of the Nigerians are yet to recover from that shock of abrupt removal, even though they anticipated it.
Yes, and even what appears to be making it worse is, you know, as I said, the fact that everything is all coming at the same time. Apart from the fuel subsidy removal, unification of exchange rate. Again, so you also have this electricity tariff. Yeah. You know, that is also about to go up. If you go to the ports, to the customs, to have jacked up the, you know, cost of, you know, clearing.
So many things at the same time.
Yeah, at the same time. So the end result, you know, will be colossal. Yes, colossal. Yes, you know, hardship colossal. There are people today who I know that, you know, have stopped going to work, you know, it's not regularly. It's not as if they can,
all over.
Yes, because of the cost of transport.
And those enterprises that can't do without the manpower, they are still cracking their heads to see how they can actually demystify this new norm.
Yes, the cost of living has gone up so high, and just as you know, he rightly pointed out, it's difficult for the president. Of course, even mentioned it on the day of the inauguration, that he intends to see a low interest rate environment, intends to see, you know, of course, put incentives to attract, you know, investors. Once inflation rate is going up, the tendency for the central bank is to also increase rates, to tighten monetary policy. That's why he said, which is correct, that you can't have a situation in which inflation rate is low, interest rate is low, exchange rate is low. These three prices, okay, constitute what we call policy trilemma for central banks. Okay?
Wow.
Yeah. So for me, it is in the interest of this economy to sequence the reforms and see how we can mitigate their adverse impact, you know, on the people.
Is there any indication that African politicians have learned from the dangers of electoral and political violence? When will elections in some African countries hold without worry of insurrection? These are some of the questions in the minds of many following the conclusion of general elections in Nigeria and currently in Sierra Leone as the country went to the polls on Saturday, June 24. Take a look at this.
Julius Maada Bio is leading Sierra Leone's presidential election count, the country's electoral commission said on Monday, with 60% of votes tallied. A provisional results sheet showed Bio on over 1 million votes. His biggest rival, Samura Kamara of the opposition All People's Congress, was at just under 800,000. There are another 11 candidates vying for the presidency. However, international observers have voiced concerns over a lack of transparency in the tallying of ballots. Observer and lawyer Augustine Sorisengbe Mara said it is up to the commission to dispel such suspicions.
So, for example, make sure that the counting process is transparent, make sure that the tallying process is transparent, make sure that the results publication processes are beyond transparent. That's the only way you can allay the fears and the doubts of the opposition party.
Hello viewers and welcome to Daily Politics. On this program, we discuss issues around politics, policy and governance. I'm Hamza Idris. On the program tonight, we are joined by Mbo Eno, a Deputy Director, Elections and Governance at the Center for Journalism, Innovation and Development, CJID. We are also joined virtually by Jide Ojo, a political analyst. Gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
We're happy having you in the studio. And Jide, thank you for joining us virtually from Akwa Ibom State.
My pleasure.
Break, and when we return, the conversation commences. Don't go away. Welcome back. Mbo, let me start with you. Fresh from Sierra Leone. When did you return?
I came in last night.
Wow.
Yeah.
How strenuous? Let me start with the journey, maybe.
It was a very strenuous journey. So usually that trip shouldn't be more than about 3 hours, 3 hours, 30 minutes.
3 hours, 30 minutes. Yeah, from Nigeria.
From Nigeria, but so you end up doing about 8 to 9 hours because you have to take off from Nigeria, do a stop in Togo, do a stop in Ghana before you get to Freetown. So,
when you look at the map, it's like you go, you come back, you move.
Like, it's not a straightforward journey.
And that is Africa, West Africa for you.
That's West
What's
Africa.
the difference between the complexity of the trip and what took you to Sierra Leone? I mean, the election that you monitored.
Okay, so basically, let me say that I was largely in Freetown. Okay. And I didn't really step out of Freetown, but we had partnerships with journalists across the 16 provinces of
okay, so they have 16
provinces of Sierra Leone.
Like our 36 states.
36 states, okay. Yes, and I think 172 chiefdoms, which is like local governments.
They call them chiefdoms, meaning traditional rulers are really strong there.
Oh, well, I don't know the...
Okay, you didn't take... Maybe you should have come with that for us.
I didn't go into the details of why it's called chiefdoms.
Yeah.
But I think about 170 or 182. I'm not too sure about the number, but it's less than 200.
Oh, okay.
That's equivalent of our own local government areas. And I want to say that where I was, Freetown, was largely peaceful. And on the day of the elections, Saturday the 24th, we did not have so much reports of violence until much later in the day. That's also because, just like in the case of Nigeria, the Electoral Commission had so much to do, had about 5 years to prepare. But on the day of elections, fell short of delivery.
Oh my God!
Because some polling units didn't get materials until about 11, 12, and where they had materials, it's either the materials were not complete, or we even had a case where the materials for a particular polling unit was taken to another polling unit. And so the whole...
Just a semblance of what happened
in Nigeria.
Was that what prompted Samura Kamara, right? That is how you call him. The candidate of APC, right?
Yeah.
To call for the resignation of Mohamed Karewe. the electoral chief there?
It could be, but I mean, there were other things that went into play. Interestingly, there was a polling unit in Freetown that did not start elections until about 8 p.m.
I don't understand. Is it 8 a.m. or 8 p.m.?
p.m.
Almost 12 hours. Election starts at what hour?
7 a.m.
7, meaning and almost 13 hours
after,
ahead of time.
Yes.
In Freetown.
Start elections. And the Premium Times reporter that was on ground who also witnessed a particular polling unit, whereas at 5 p.m. materials had not come, and the citizens were protesting. So it got that.
Hold your breath. I think we should bring Jide Ojo into this conversation. What is your take? You've had Umbo. Just ask what happened in Nigeria. Why? Sierra Leone, Nigeria. Why? When it comes to election, we always have issues. Jide.
The truth is, Hamza, thanks for having me, and thanks for the opportunity to speak through your platform this evening. The truth is that election is not as easy to plan and organize as many of us make it look. There are so many intricacies, so many challenges, unforeseen circumstances that could mitigate, that could militate against the best of plans. And Nigeria, well, you say why Nigeria and Sierra Leone have shared common history and politics. Remember, we are both Anglophone countries. There are very few of us in the West African sub-region. Only about 4 of us speaks English as our official language. Nigeria, Gambia, Sierra Leone, and Ghana. All the other ones are Francophone. So we share that. As you remember, many of our political elites read in Furabe College in Sierra Leone. One of them being former governor of Ondo State, old Ondo State, Adekunle Ajasi, had this degree in Furabe College in Sierra Leone. And of course, we share the history of colonialism, slave trade, and decolonization, and all of that. Sierra Leone has also had civil war that lasted over 10 years from about, it ended about 2002 from about 1998 or thereabout. So we have those things in common. But coming to specifically answer your question,
yes,
logistical challenge is not new to electoral process, particularly in Africa, where and the sorry thing is that you have where you thought should have been priority areas are the ones that are most affected. Imagine elections in Abuja not starting until about noon. I was an observer in the February-March election in Nigeria under the auspices of Nigerian Women Trust Fund. And we went around and we saw that in many places, elections did not start until 2-3 hours after the hour of 8. So, but you cannot but have incidences like this, given the fact that there are exogenic factors that may be responsible. For instance, we have the logistics. Who are the ones in charge of logistics? You depend on external transporters, some of whom have political affiliations, and sometimes they can sabotage your process. We have seen incidences where boat owners and transport unions have political affiliations, and they sometimes pull the strings. Even when you have paid them advance, they may refuse to come up. And where there is restriction of movement, to get a replacement for those who decide to pull out at the last minute may not be that easy. There could also be fear of insecurity. There could also be fear of, mix up of the materials, sensitive and non-sensitive materials. But I wasn't there in Freetown, so I wouldn't know exactly what the sticky point was for Sierra Leone. But suffice to say that we share so much in common, and they possibly are learning from the bad practice in Nigeria.
Exactly. But Umbo, freshly came back from there. So some of the issues he raised, are they the same? I mean, in terms of logistics, they relied on transport corporations, or the electoral empire had its own vehicles, boats, donkeys, and all that, because they also have coastal lines that I think they need boats and all that to ferry the logistics.
Okay, so I would not be able to answer how their logistics went because I did not go into finding out how the process of dispatching essential materials was going to be. But I was in Sierra Leone sometime in May before I went back for the elections, and at that point we had met with an assistant director of media and communication of the Electoral Commission, who acknowledged the role that Nigeria had played in the elections. And he had told me then that Nigeria had donated 2 boats to them for the elections day activity. So I want to also think that that boat was put into use on that day. But in terms of the surface distribution,
you didn't monitor that.
I may not be able to.
But were you appalled that inside Freetown, election did not start in certain locations until around 13 hours after commencement of the process?
Yes, I was, because first, Freetown is not as big as, say, a place like Abuja. I mean,
or Kano, or Port Harcourt.
Okay, so let's come back to the major cities. I mean, Freetown is not as big as, say, put Amak and Buhari together. And then we get to have situations where materials don't get to polling units in good time, and where it got to places in good time, there was a mix-up in terms of
the distribution. You take the one for unit A to unit Z or things like that.
So that's what was on ground in Freetown.
The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has been called upon to take necessary measures to prevent the recurrence of the numerous challenges that undermine the integrity of the 2023 general elections during the upcoming off-cycle governorship elections in Kogi, Bayelsa, and Imo states in November. The call was also extended to Nigerians who were urged to shift their attention to the positive aspects that emerged from the previous elections and work towards maintaining them. Take a look.
General elections, Faith Mwadishi, the executive director of the Center for Transparency Advocacy, highlighted the concerns raised by some citizens regarding the challenges faced during the elections, particularly logistical issues. However, she emphasized the need for Nigerians to consider the broader context in which the elections occurred. While acknowledging these challenges, she emphasized that it is crucial for citizens not to overlook the significant achievements of the 2023 elections.
I don't think anybody can say that I'm a card-carrying member of any political party. But there's some people who are card-carrying members of political parties, and because it didn't go well in some areas, it went well. In other areas, they rejoice because it went their way. In other areas, they don't rejoice because it didn't go their way. The political process is for us to strengthen our democracy. And the reason for this is because the next off-season election that is coming, Kogi, Bayelsa, and Imo, there are some lessons we have learned from the 2023 general elections that we need to highlight to help strengthen the forthcoming elections that we are having. And I think also that all of these conversations that we're having, as we're putting the torchlight on the electoral empire, we should look at the political class. We need to extract the commitment from the political class that they are ready to help our electoral processes.
Welcome back, and congratulations for the recent briefing, roundtable with stakeholders. Who are those stakeholders that you discussed with?
Okay, so we had observers, people from who were on the field on election day. We also had some politicians in the hall, and we also had citizens, Nigerians, ordinary Nigerians who were there, including journalists that were there to look at the 2023 election while we're preparing for the forthcoming off-cycle election.
Yes, one thing about you is you always call a spade a spade, and maybe that is why you re-emphasize at that forum that you are not a card-carrying member of any political party, and neither are you fixated with INEC. You are neutral. You bring out issues. Now, many Nigerians are condemning the election, and we are facing another election in the future. Is that why you convoke that meeting, to learn from the mistakes?
Exactly. You know, there's this saying everywhere, I think it's an African saying, that you don't throw the baby away with the bathwater. Yeah. We all put in a lot into preparing for the 2023 election. Some people put in more than the others. And there were people who were expecting certain results, but they didn't get it. And it happens for every election, even household elections that they hold, even community elections. Yeah. Most times, the initial reaction is, if it doesn't go your way, it didn't go very well. But if it went your way, you are celebrating. If you also take a step back, you will see that those people who it didn't go their way this time, some time ago that it went their way, they were celebrating and commending the entire process. Now, we are not saying that the election was 100% perfect. Like we say, there's no perfect election anywhere in the world. Even in the developed world, there's no perfect election anywhere. So
people are still discussing the last U.S. election.
Exactly.
Even though another one is
just about to happen. So the thing is, we learn from the good things that happened. We learn from the mistakes of the bad things that happened so that they don't happen anymore, and strengthen the good things that happen. You know, going into the election, we talked a lot about the issue of technology. We all know that as humans, we don't have 100%, grip on technology. It can fail at any time. Even you can be riding your car, you just leave your home, and then just in front of your gate, your car develops fault without any notice. And so when it happens, you have to get an expert to look at it to say, this is what happened, and he or she gives you advice on what next to do. So going into this election, we had a few innovations that we brought. For instance, looking at the Electoral Act 2022, yes, that we had, there were new innovations around there. There were innovations around the use of technology, and then going into what has happened is that you had Nigerians, you had humans who had to sit down to look at all of these processes. For instance, one of the things that you need to bring out of this election, that it's also something that grew from the 2019 election into the 2023 election, the issue of continuous voters registration. Yeah. The Electoral Act prescribes a way to carry out continuous voter registration. But what we have been having in this country has been ad hoc voter registration close to the time of election, 1 month. But we have had over 1 year and a half period for people. Is it
one of the 15 clauses you
Yes,
spoke
exactly. And then that was also carried on. And then also the fact that now you have the machine that identifies real people. Now, look at the total number of persons who came out to vote. Some people have argued that, oh yes, there's voter apathy.
25 million,
yes, but people argue that there's voter apathy. We had also said, with the result that we are getting, it's important for us to look very closely into our voter register, because now you have an election where you have less than 25 million percent of the number of participation. But again, you want to go back to look at how has it been. We have been able to remove that people can just come and vote even when they were not there. Now you cannot clone somebody's voter's card. You cannot steal somebody's identity anymore to come out to vote, because you no longer have the incidence form. So it has been wiped out. The identity theft in our election is completely wiped out.
So
and
it's zero now.
It's zero. That's why you see that the winner of the election got 8 million votes. Yes. And then if you put together the total number of votes he didn't get, it's 100%. It's 100% more than the votes. That's if you put the different candidates together, all their votes.
What
it's
Atiku got, what Obi got, and all the rest. Yeah, 18 candidates.
It's over 100% of what he got. We have never had that. We always had somebody winning election with almost 100%, votes, much more than the next person. So it shows you right now that the real people, our voting process is capturing now real people. Remember, there was a time we had the election, and I keep using that example because I was on the field observing the election. I think that was 2007 when I was on the field in Delta State when we were observing the election on the field, and somebody called my attention that Delta State result has been announced at the International Conference Center. While we were still on the field, people were we were not even compiling. People were still voting. Wow. People were still voting when election results were announced.
And that did not happen during
No, it didn't happen during this 2023
because the room
general
to do
election
that wasn't there.
You understand? And then another thing again, it calls to question the commitment of our political class to improving our democracy. Now, there is this opportunity for every person who is contesting election at whatever level to ensure that you have polling agents at all the polling units. And if you have a polling agent, it means you have an eye
on what
there.
is happening.
But there are some political parties who didn't even deploy up to 2% of the total number of
and they claim that there were infractions.
Exactly. So
I have two fundamental questions on this point you made, and I want you to clear them. The first one is, you said, okay, we have real voters. But based on INEC register, over 90 million have been registered, and then is it 80-something million have collected
the PVC? The
PVC. Now then, what happened to almost 55 million that did not vote? Is it apathy, or where do we place them? Okay. Or INEC has to do another round of cleaning?
So INEC truly needs to do another round of cleaning. That's one of our recommendations that we have. But you know that prior to the election, we began to see politicians dispose voters' cards that they collected. So those people whose cards were flung on the highways, caught in the bushes, those people didn't have voters' cards to vote.
At what point were they dispossessed of those cards?
At the point of before now, because you could actually use another person's voter's card to go and vote. But with the BVAS, you no longer can do that. You no longer can do that. I may already say that we have been able to eliminate identity theft in our electoral processes. So in the past, those politicians will bring out those cards and just distribute it to people. And say, go and vote. You can go and vote. The reason you can vote is that
Simon can claim Abdul.
Exactly.
Ezekiel can claim Israel.
So you can go, and then when it's not captured a fingerprint, they fill incidence form for you. And you are captured. But now there's no incidence form. It's either your fingerprint is captured or your face is captured. And you know we cannot borrow people's faces to go for election. So you needed to be there physically. That's one major thing we need to keep saying about the outcome of this 2023 election that we had.
It's not all about voter apathy. It's beyond that.
It's not all about voter. It's not all about voter apathy, because if you're looking at one election that you had citizens really interested in, it was this 2023 election. And there's another thing. There's another thing about expectation, another thing about outcome. So if I have this expectation that this particular candidate is going to be the winner, and this happens, my expectation is completely dashed. And so the narrative becomes, oh, that something had happened. Meanwhile, we forget as Nigerians that all of these politicians on election, towards election, they behave as if they are enemies. They come out with different languages, and the followers follow the body language of these politicians. But at the end of the day, you see all of them come to a round table. You see all of them going to the same parties. You see all of them now lobbying for one position or the other. Meanwhile, we have so divided ourselves, even within families, that people can no longer even talk to themselves. Because, oh, this person was part of this political party, this person was part of this political party, and it didn't go our own way. So what we really need to do, and one thing that came out again, is that we need real political education and voter education for the citizens.
As President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration gains momentum, there are signs that he's actively seeking globally acclaimed technocrats to assume key positions in his government's strategic ministries. This begs the question, what is the fate of the governors and many others who strive to ensure his emergence as not just the party's candidate, but also his victory in the 2023 presidential election? So far, the president has made 12 key appointments out of the 20 slots which he sought Senate approval for, and none of these governors made the cut. Will the president be working with these governors, some of whom are now out of office, or will he risk it all by working with technocrats all through? These are the questions we'll attempt to dissect on the program tonight. And hello viewers, and welcome to Daily Politics. Eid Mubarak. On this program, we discuss issues around politics, policy, and governance. I am Hamza Idris. On the program, we are joined by Baba Yusuf, a strategist and policy analyst. He's also a columnist and the CEO at Global Investment and Trade Company. Also joining us is Mukhtar Suleiman, a public commentator and a strategic communications expert. Welcome to the program, and Eid Mubarak, gentlemen.
Thank you, Hamza.
We're happy having you. It's the festive mode. Yeah.
Eid Mubarak.
Yes, we'll go on a short break, and when we return, the conversation of the day commences. Don't go away. Welcome back. Yes, Baba Yusuf, as a strategist, what is your assessment so far? 12 appointments, apart from the service chiefs, right?
Yes.
What is your take?
So far, so good. I'm not surprised by the appointments. If we look at the antecedents of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, he's a man that has a knack for picking talent, spotting them, picking them, working with them. And he's also having this very interesting quality of a long-standing leader, and that is when you look at him, look at a leader, you pick not less than 5 people and ask, how long have they been together? That demonstrates the depth of the quality of that leader, a leader that has people that have been with him for decades. So these are long-standing political allies that have been with him, that understand his vision. He understands this. There's commonality of purpose. There's a shared vision. People that have supported him and been with him to deliver. You know, as the saying goes, you don't change a winning team. So suffice it to say, these particular hires are hires that I believe are people that have his ears. They have been his sounding boards. And they are people he believes are going to add value, you know, by upscaling the quality of his leadership from a governor's regional leader to a national leader.
All right, Mukhtar, what is your take? I am suspecting something is happening because anyway, the aggressive when subsidy was removed, no protest. When Naira, you know, the window was closed, no protest, right? Now, even appointments. Look at the service chiefs, for instance. I didn't hear ethnic or religious jungus making, you know, noise over it. Why is it so? Is it that Nigerians are so tired? I keep asking this question on this program, that is it that Nigerians are just looking for something else, that, okay, let's get whatever you have, let's see it on the ground and let's move on.
I don't think it's because Nigerians are tired. I think it's because it's shocking. So we're sort of catching our breath. That's the best way I like to put it. He is playing politics not as the regular way politics is being played in the country that we are aware of. Over the past 23 years of our democracy as we know it, there's always a pattern that people can actually foresee and oftentimes guess how it's going to turn out. But that's not the situation that we are in currently. So I'm seeing that our polity and our governance is beginning to take a different turn, a dynamic. If it's consistent over the course of the next 4 years, there's going to be a shift in the perception of how politics is played in the polity. So, and that is really a good thing that we want, if it is played right, of course. I don't know what the short
the backlash would be, especially with the trajectory that the president is going currently.
Yes.
Because we all know...
If he maintains the momentum.
Yeah, because we all know that political appointments are reward for good behaviors during campaigns. Yeah, so, and there were a lot of people who were at the vanguard of the campaign, people who saw to it that they gave it blood and sweat. I mean, for the very first time, we saw somebody like Malam Nasser El-Rufai go against Buhari publicly. Did a whole press conference and everything, especially during the night.
And I've seen Shehu Sani now mocking El-Rufai because he was thinking that El-Rufai will either be Secretary of the Government of the Federation or Chief of Staff.
Exactly.
But he's now mocking him. In fact, the latest post was that why is he silent? That they should continue with their fight. Because he has this feeling that maybe El-Rufai has been ditched by the president.
Well, we don't know what's going on. It's, if anything, antecedent.
It's just a number, you know.
If anything, history has taught us is that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu can be a very fickle person. It's very difficult to actually predict what his next move is.
He's a shrewd fellow.
Yeah, and he holds his cards very close to his chest. Yeah. So we're hoping that at the end of the day, whatever it is that he's doing, however it is that he's piecing this politics together, is actually going to be to the benefit of the country in a larger scale than otherwise.
I can see you are nodding your head. Yes. So far, I saw Professor Isaac Akintola. He's the director of Muslim rights groups. I think he's mocking some people. I don't want us to discuss that deeply, but what he was saying is, by the few appointments, even though he said they are keenly watching how things unfold. But in the statement he issued, he said, so far, they have seen the trajectory. And it's like, from what we have on ground, this issue of maybe Islamization or taking people from one part of the country has been demystified.
That's true. And again, by antecedents, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Mr. President, has, by his nature, being cosmopolitan, being balanced in the way and manner he does things since his emergence in the political, history or landscape of Nigeria. But importantly, taking it from there, I think we need to expand that conversation with regards to the reward. After elections, the basis for reward may be just basically because of people that have made inputs in terms of campaign and all that. If you look at it traditionally, even you're looking at the United States of America, what we consider bastion of democracy, or the United Kingdom, even, the recent emergence of Richie Sunak or, Boris Johnson and all of them. There are three layers or three methodologies to reward, politicians or players in the political scheme. What we are yes, and I will explain them.
All right.
And then what is important is to note here with the emergence of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and what he's doing is he is adding value to the political evolution by doing what? By adding value to what his predecessors were doing from the time of President Olusegun Obasanjo to President Yar'Adua to President Goodluck Jonathan, and also, of course, to some certain extent, not significantly, President Muhammadu Buhari. So what am I saying? The first is like what Mukhtar said, settling political allies that have demonstrated that participation. They have made the input in terms of numbers by delivering the votes, and by way of that, you need to give them, some kind of reward, which many people perceive should be either ministerial appointment or all that. The second layer of people are people that, like I said, have been loyal to you through thick and thin, not just on the rainy day. People obviously saw what was playing out. We know there were people, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is very intelligent, and it doesn't take that depth of intelligence, with due respect, to know how the dynamic this emergence of Bola Tinubu happened. 6 months ago, there were people that were doggedly against him within the party hierarchy, against his emergence in the primary, that later on did an about-face and became his most, laudable supporters, and claiming now the victory that they delivered, they are loyal and all that. Loyalty is not tested by temporary activities, gentlemen. Loyalty is tested over time, and we are very sure.
So that second,
that second group are the people that have been with him through thick and thin.
Yeah.
People that have been with him, and like I said, he's a type of leader that rewards that.
Yeah.
That recognizes that. And at this critical moment, he needs people that he can trust, not political Shylocks, not those political quote-unquote jobbers.
Because there are many who it was when they realized it was obvious he was going to make it. Yeah.
It doesn't mean he's going to throw them away, but I'm telling you, the settlement comes around this political factor.
Yeah,
The fourth factor is what is very important. It started during the time of President Olusegun Obasanjo. If you want to have a trajectory that is forward-facing, forward-thinking, you must bring in technocrats to drive your governance framework.
Okay.
So you have politics, you have policy, you have governance. How do you want these three
the slogan
pillars?
of our program.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And these are three critical pillars to evolve your polity and to deliver good governance. In doing so, even Joe Biden, Obama, every leader that emerges has these three layers of settlement. And there is no rule that says you should carry everything and give those people that were bringing the votes and all that, because they may not have the capacity, or they may not have the integrity, or they have become political liabilities in a way. So what do? You identify the people that will deliver the critical portfolios for you. And that is why you see the likes of Okonjo-Iweala, the likes of Obi Ezekwesili, the likes of Sanusi Lamido Sanusi, and all that. And it's not also the settlement, people perceive settlement from the point of view of special advisors and ministers. We forget that the critical players, the critical success factors to deliver good governance are not the ministers. They are the key CEOs, the drivers of the MDAs. And that is why you see President Olusegun Obasanjo, President Yar'Adua particularly, were very deliberate in selecting the likes of Okonjo-Iweala, picking the likes of El-Rufai to become the DG of BPE, setting the platform for him to become the minister of FCT. These were people that were hitherto either apolitical or just pure technocrats. Yes. Okay, you have the likes of Akinwumi Adesina, who came in, and became Minister of Agriculture, coming in as a technocrat from outside the country. You have, the list is long. But in terms of the MDAs, you have the likes of Sanusi Lamido Sanusi coming to CBN. You have the likes of the man Fowler at FIRS. These are technocrats you bring on board. They may later become political, but the key thing is they have that, first of all, initial neutrality. Secondly, the value they are bringing to the table based on the vision of your framework. So it's early days. Another thing is there are some political players that have become so big that giving them, or that have become for expediency of politics, giving them political office on the front line becomes an issue. Come on. We have 8 years. People have been governors for 8 years. And Nigerians are, yearning for freshness in this governance.
Yeah.
Tinubu knows that. So bringing all these governors again, who probably hitherto have not even delivered good governance, but have delivered value for him to win election. What is he doing? We have, from the emergence even of the Speaker of the House of Representatives, we hear rumors or snipers, which, makes sense, that Malam Nasir El-Rufai promoted the emergence of Tajuddin Abbas, which is part of political settlement, for example. We have the likes of his political protege, Hadiza Bala Usman, who is now a key player in his kitchen cabinet.
Yeah.
So you can go on. So that way, these people have emerged as political players. They don't necessarily have to be there all the time in the front seat.
There are other places that
so he is also helping them to evolve, to become critical political stakeholders and become the unseen hands, not necessarily playing the game in the foray. It's another way.
I will come back to you, but from what Baba said, are you in agreement? And from me, the conclusion is that it's not necessary for all the governors that worked for his emergence to be ministers.
Agreed. Actually, I think it's actually true. You ought to bring in value for the work that you're actually going to be assigned with. So it shouldn't just be plain rewards for...
it's not about compensation.
It shouldn't just be all about compensation. However, there is this popular saying that says it is politics, good politics, and good policies that brings good governance. So you could get good policies right, but if you fail...
You are pampering our program tonight.
Yeah. If you fail in the
which
politics...
Which is good.
If you fail in the politics, you're going to have it wrong, because politics is where vested interest lies. So you could have good policies as a technocrat, but if you cannot play the politics of vested interest to ensure that it flies, governance will suffer. So I think that's something
in my mind.
Yeah, you see, I think that is that's something that the president needs to put into account. He's excited, and it's good. And from the look of things, the kind of policies he has rolled out, the kind of appointments he has made, he has the good interest of the country at heart. However, he has to find a way, and I know for a fact that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is actually a very good negotiator. So he has to look for a way to ensure that these people do not have unchecked grievances that might end up becoming a big problem for him within the governance systems. So one way or the other, something has to be sorted. Like Baba Yusuf actually mentioned earlier, the appointment of Hadiza Bala Usman into office sort of cushions the ego of Malam Nasser El-Rufai, because of course this is your person. We all know that this is your person. Azabala is always, he has never been quiet or silent about it.
Even the speaker.
Yeah, and even the speaker that he actually, although it's still a rumor, so to speak, but if that is true, then yeah, then that's also something. Some
actually say it was Bajabi Abila who worked for the
however it goes, it still has to, the president has to ensure that he does not forget the politics aspect of it. He doesn't get too excited, because aside from me, I'm not an APC person anyway, let me put that disclaimer out there, but there's also a re-election to look forward to. At the end of the day. 2027. Yeah, so you don't want to play a long...
But Nigerians don't really care about 2027.
No, we're not talking about...
What they want is what happens before December.
No, you see, no.
How can some people turn around Nigeria?
I know for a fact that the president is very excited.
And then how can prices of commodities come down? How can we have these electronic vehicles or gas-powered vehicles on the road?
Those things are not going to work now.
How, you know, NER can change its mind and say, okay, look,
let's be one
electricity. Exactly.
But all of that cannot work now, because if you look at them in the long term, it has to take some time for the market to stabilize and for these things to actually take effect if they are properly implemented. However, just I think 2 weeks ago, I published an article, one of my articles with the Daily Trust newspaper, was on how poor consumer behavior.
We have columnists and opinion writer in the studio.
So one of it is how poor consumer behavior can thwart good policies. So while we know that these good policies are coming in, and let's assume that the government gets it right in the implementation side, if we have poor consumer behavior, if we do crowd mob reaction toward these things, it will thwart the intent. The intended consequence of it will be that there will be a very poor outcome at the end of the day. So we also have to take that into account. So Nigerians need to be a tad patient, and let's see how all of these things actually roll out. But the president himself, going back to the core of this conversation, the president himself needs to always remember that it is politics and policies that gives good governance.